Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 49. I am your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan, and this is the world's first podcast. That's right, mark it down here, folks, the very first in the world, dedicated fully to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden boats. Welcome to the show today, folks. Good to have you. I am sitting at my favorite recording spot, Bayview State Park in Skagit County, Washington State, USA, looking out over Puget Sound. It's a gorgeous day, about 70 degrees, the sun's out, watching a little sailboat, sitting here on my lunch break, taking a little break from my fighting ghosts accounting job, and life is good. Today's featured segment is SCAMP CAMP Part 1, and this is going to be an interview with Scott Jones, who is the manager of the boat shop at the Northwest Maritime Center in Port Townsend. I interviewed Scott a couple weeks ago while I was at the SCAMP Camp, and so Scott's going to talk about his own history with wooden boats, and we're going to talk about the SCAMP Camp a little bit and have some fun with it, so stick around for the interview. I think you'll like it. Please connect with me. You can do so via email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can subscribe to my e-news list by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. You can leave comments on my website each week that I put my podcast out on Thursday sometime. I also write a blog post and show some pictures, and you can put some comments there if you would like. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. That's a mouthful. If you look for Wooden Boat Dan, you'll find me there. And I'd love it if you'd send pictures, stories, tell me about the boat you're working on, the boat you own, the boat you thought about buying, the varnishing that got away from you, whatever it is, I'd love to hear about it. You can also call my voicemail feedback hotline at 424-261-2360. And if you're listening to this podcast from my website, if you subscribe to the RSS feed, you can receive each episode as it's published weekly on Thursdays. And you can do that on my website, click on the RSS button, or you can go to iTunes Store to the podcast section, look for Hooked on Wooden Boats, and click on the subscribe button there. I would appreciate it. Well, I hope you've had a good week in the wooden boat world. My week was good, of course. With my day job and doing some other stuff, it's hard to find enough time to work on my canoe, but I have been making some progress. This past week, let's see, what have I been doing? I finished putting 2 coats of West Systems epoxy on the hull of the boat and did a little sanding in between the coats. I've got 2 coats on that, and so that's got to be sanded a little bit more before I paint the hull. Now I'm moving inside the boat and sanding inside. Basically, the bottom of the inside I've already epoxied and glassed, but the top 3 panels on each side, I guess it's 4 panels, now I'm sanding and have to epoxy those probably 2 coats before I get ready to do my varnish. Sanding is one tedious job. In fact, I thought about writing an article entitled "How to Sand Your Brains Out Without Losing Your Marbles," but I decided not to do that. But I have been doing some reading on sanding, and when you're sanding epoxy especially, it's very critical to change your sandpaper very often because the epoxy has a tendency to fill the sandpaper Once it fills, then you have a tendency to press harder on your electric sander, which tends to heat the epoxy up a little bit, which makes it come off in your sander and stick even more. I'm one of those guys that has a hard time changing sanding pads frequently because I'm thinking, oh geez, I just spent another 75 cents. Now my 12-foot canoe is going to cost $5,000 instead of $3,000. But I got to learn to do it. The other thing I do is I've got a little wire brush for cleaning sandpaper. Once the paper gets a little bit filled up with epoxy, I kind of tap it and go across it with the brush to remove the white epoxy that's kind of built up on the sandpaper and get a little extra life out of it that way. But anyway, moral of the story is get your stuff sanded properly and change your sandpaper. So anyway, the canoe is coming along. Today I went online to Jamestown Distributors, which, by the way, if you go to my website, there's a button on the home page. If you click on Jamestown Distributors and you make an order there, I get paid a small commission. It's just a way of supporting me for the podcast. And so anyway, I went online to Jamestown and I ordered some Interlux pre-coat primer for the hull and a quart of white paint Interlux Brightside for the hull. And I ordered my Captain's Spar varnish for the interior and some Interlux 333 thinner for the paint and the primer, and a couple little brushes and things. So they've got great deals there. I'd love it if you'd support me, and I'm looking forward to getting my order next week so I can continue to work on my canoe. Well, so last week I started the wooden boat tip of the week, number 1 last week. This is number 2. And basically, number 2 is to pay for the best quality materials available at the time you build or repair a boat based upon your budget. And if you do that, you'll get a more durable, lower maintenance vessel. So what that means is, let's just put that in practical terms. So like with this canoe, I built the hull out of a Kumi plywood 1088, but I used the knockoff 1088 instead of the true British standard 1088. And so the 1088 that I purchased was about half the cost. It would have cost me another $100 to get the real stuff. And 5 years from now, if I get a little crack in the hull because of a void from the knockoff 1088, which it did have a few small voids, I'm going to think, that was really stupid. For $100 more, I would have avoided that crack and future cracks. I guess you have to think of wooden boats as kind of heirlooms in a sense, and at the time you build them, step up to the plate and buy the best quality materials. Another case in point is I went to a local supplier to buy yacht enamel, and I brought home some water-based yacht enamel. It's a discontinued product from System 3. And I started doing some research, and I called System 3, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't want to use water-based. I don't want to use house paint latex. I've thought about doing that, but my hunch is if I get the Interlux Brightside's polyurethane paint, which I did today, I ordered that paint is going to last probably twice as long as a water-based paint. So it's like, why am I trying to cut corners? 5 years from now, I'll look at the boat and go, bummer, I got to sand this thing all down. I got to repair a few dings, and I got to repaint it. And this time I'm going to use a better paint. So anyway, don't be in the position of down the road thinking, gosh, I wish I'd used a better material, a better varnish, a better paint, a better piece of wood, better piece of plywood. Do it right the first time. Spend the money. And don't get it in your head that somehow if you build your own boat, that it's not going to cost very much. Because, folks, it does cost a lot. If you want a cheap boat, like a 12-foot canoe, go buy a plastic one at Walmart or Costco at some place for, $269 and go use it and beat it up, and that's fine. If you want a wooden boat that's going to look classic and traditional, and if you take care of it, it's going to last probably several generations or more, then use the right stuff, take care of it, and figure the cost is part of the deal. You're not going to build it for a cheap price. That's not the point. So that's my tip of the week. And by the way, I read an interesting article by my buddy Brian Toss recently about the virtues of wooden boats and being traditional and kind of why it makes sense to have a wooden boat. It's kind of like a piece of artwork, except that if you buy a master painting, if you bought a Da Vinci painting and hung it on your wall, as long as you kept it out of UV rays and protected and all that, you wouldn't have to repaint it or reframe it or all that. Whereas with your wooden vessel, if you do use it, you're going to have to repair and maintain it from time to time. Anyway, I may include a link to that on my web page. So that's it for my wooden boat tip number 2. Pay for the best quality materials available at the time you build or repair your boat. You'll get a more durable, lower maintenance product. This week's shout out to new subscribers is to Jack Gray. Jack, thanks for subscribing to my e-news list, Hooked on Wooden Boats. I appreciate it. I look forward to connecting with you. And again, if you'd like to subscribe, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. We've got some upcoming events, but I need to update my list. But I know that this coming weekend in Tacoma, Washington is the Maritime Heritage Festival. I think that's what it's called, or just the Maritime Festival. I'm not sure. That's Saturday and Sunday, the 20... I don't know, what's today? Today is the 22nd, 24th, 25th and 26th, Tacoma, Washington, Maritime Festival. And then September 1st to 4th is the Small Craft Skills Academy by Howard Rice in Port Townsend. The weekend after Labor Day, September 7th, 8th, and 9th, is the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival, which I'm really looking forward to. This year I'm going to spend the whole 3 days there. I'll be giving a presentation on Sunday at 10:45 in the morning in the Discovery Room of the Red Building of the Northwest Maritime Center. I'd love it if you'd show up and say hi. If you can make it, that would be awesome. And I'm planning on raffling out a few of my Hooked on Wooden Boat products, t-shirt, a hat, and a coffee cup. And I might even have some bumper stickers there. So please show up if you can. I'm really looking forward to that event. And actually the weekend of Labor Day is the Victoria Classic Boat Festival, Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And that's about all I've got on my event list for now. So I hope you can make one of those or all those. And if you've got some other events you'd like me to post to my website, just shoot me over an email. We're going to move on now to the interview with Scott Jones. Scott, as I mentioned earlier, is the boat shop manager for the Northwest Maritime Center. He's going to talk about his personal boating stuff and then about the SCAMP camp that just happened. So take it away, Scott. Okay, it is August 9th, 2012. I am in Port Townsend at the Northwest Maritime Center with Scott Jones. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're sitting out in front of the Northwest Maritime Center during the SCAMP camp. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about you a little bit, Scott, or have you talk about you. So tell me how you got into wooden boats and when you started boating and all that stuff.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm actually not much of a sailor. I'm kind of an odd duck in that regards.
Okay.
I got into boats because really I'm a fisherman. And I love drift boats.
Oh, really?
It's sailboats and motorboats, power cruisers are like a drift boat to a sled on a river. Drift boats, you're going with the river. It's quiet. It's lovely. Sailboat, you're going with the wind. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in a house with a dad who was a jack of all trades, carpenter. And
really?
So I grew up doing a lot of woodworking things in our house.
Was that in Washington State?
Yeah, I grew up in Olympia.
Okay.
And so, eventually, my passion for fishing and quiet drift boats and woodworking just kind of came together. And I was saying to my now wife, what if I built boats? Instead of doing what I was doing at the time, which was a pretty comfortable job as a restaurant manager at a place I'd worked at in Olympia forever.
Oh, really?
And I made a big leap of faith and went to the boat school.
Yeah. Now, what year was that?
I guess I graduated 2009.
Okay.
So 08, 09.
Uh-huh.
Not that long ago. When I say it out loud, it doesn't seem like it's all that long ago, but it feels like it's been a little while. So I got out of the boat school. I was in the contemporary program under Bruce Blatchley.
Yeah.
Loved it. Built a Caledonia yawl. Got to do a lot of different cool things. Build spars. And so in the interior program under Jeff Hammond, and loved that. And Jeff's a great guy. And managed
that's fine joinery and a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah. We did some work in the forecastle for adventurous bunks and cabinets in our galley. So that was a good time. I also built my own little project while I was in the interior bit, a table for my house.
Oh, did you? Nice.
Really, I love looking at that thing. It's so pretty.
Cool. What's it made out of?
Macrame and kaya, so it's kind of similar to sapele.
Oh, really?
But they had it on special. It was, was a boat school student, so the cheapest thing I could find, really, that I thought was kind of nice.
Nice.
And
saw?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And, I got out of boat school and said, all right, well, what the heck am I to do?
Yeah.
And I got a phone call. I got a phone call from Case Prinz.
Oh, yeah.
He had a recommendation. He called the boat school asking for somebody that had experience working with contemporary products, epoxy and plywood, and to build a boat with a gentleman. This gentleman from over the Sound wanted to build a dinghy. He knew he didn't have the skills to himself to do it, but he wanted to be involved in doing it, and so I got hired to build a dinghy with the guy.
Really?
And I had a great time building a boat with Ken.
So you got hired personally by this guy, kind of? Or was it through
the place at the time was working a little bit differently, and we've gone away from that. We were kind of a commodity, the people that were hired in there. To not talk about the nuts and bolts of how that all worked.
Get hired out for projects kind of thing?
So I worked with that guy and was paid by the Maritime Center to do that, and he paid for that, that service. We've gone away from that a bit, in that we're not really a for-hire shop. We do a lot of things like right now, a SCAMP CAMP, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And so then I did that, and
so you
that
built
just
a dinghy with Ken.
Built a dinghy with Ken, and Case was impressed with my work. He had a project that had been on hold for a little while. It was Townsend Turns, 23-foot. You may or may not have seen it. It's here in town. 23-foot trailerable weekend kind of cruiser.
Whose design is that?
Case Prinz.
Oh,
also, this was the first of. It was written up a time or two.
Okay.
Real cool boat. Very pretty.
So you built that?
Worked on that for nearly a year.
Really?
And then I managed to stay employed here at the shop. Just kind of rolled from one project into another, and we've got a bunch of boats that we maintain over the winter, and I got to do that throughout. So I've been here since I graduated.
Nice.
And it has been really nice.
So it's a full-time paying job.
It is a full-time paying job.
Nice.
Knocking on wood.
Knock on wood, yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So how young were you when you really got interested in woodworking and boats and stuff?
Well, woodworking, I'd say I was probably, from birth.
Really.
But in earnest, I wouldn't even say it was when I went to boat school. I did several things on my own prior to going there.
Yeah.
In my 20s, I guess. I'm 35 currently, so better part of a decade and a half.
Okay. Now, have you built a drift boat?
No.
For your fishing adventures?
I've built plenty of scale models of them.
Really?
As you get the plans and you look at it and you draft it out and then build some like that. And so, really, there's a great book about drift boats and river dories by Roger Fletcher, which is kind of the at least my little Bible on drift boats.
Yeah.
And so I've gone back and forth about them quite a lot. I've also gone back and forth actually quite a lot about the manner in which I would build one, either traditionally framed boat and look very traditional, or a more modern plywood and big fillets and epoxies.
Yeah.
And my thinking is that, if somebody's buying a wooden drift boat, I don't think you want one that looks like a fiberglass boat.
Yeah,
you probably you want a wooden boat because you want that wooden boat. You want a framed boat, and so if I were to build one,
is there one in your future, you think?
I've been thinking there is for a long time. But, thankfully, work keeps getting in the way of that.
So, do you get out fishing?
Oh yeah, as often as I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of fishing are you doing?
I like to fish rivers for steelhead.
Okay.
Salmon, steelhead.
Yeah.
Head east of the mountains for some trout in lakes and rivers.
Mm-hmm.
But
very cool. So you've been here at the Maritime Center since 2009.
Yes.
And so this is the first SCAMP camp.
Yeah.
And so for our listeners that don't know, a SCAMP is an 11-foot, 11-inch pocket cruiser or micro cruising sailboat, lug rig. So tell us a little bit about the boat and tell us about the camp. Camp, Scott. Yeah.
So SCAMP, I was in the shop when Josh Colvin from Small Craft Advisor contacted Case, who ran the shop at the time, about building the prototype. And so I was involved from relatively ground floor in building the first boat, the one we see right here.
3 years ago.
I can't even keep track of how long it was. I think it's around 2 years ago. Yeah, and so I built the first one along with my coworker at the time, Sarah Rudolph, who's a graduate from Iris. And not only is it 11 feet 11 inches, but it's 5'4" in beam. It's a beamy little boat, but it goes. I haven't sailed it.
Oh, really?
Or been in it underway. But I'm told it goes quite well.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun building that boat. It's the first of, and that's exciting. And John Welsford's in it. He's just a great guy.
He's the designer.
He's the designer of the boat, and so I've gotten to work. Now I'm working with him at SCAMP Camp. The Pete Leanhouse from the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building knows John, and last boat festival they thought, boy, we could do a SCAMP class. And we've had some talks from there, and all of a sudden, kind of, usually these classes you're advertising for a good long time, a year or so. This was a few months.
Really?
We decided let's do it. John Pete bought tickets for John to come up here from New Zealand. He got me to commit to being not only an instructor, but also committed to shop space for it. And lo and behold, we were nervous as to whether we'd fill a class or even get anybody. We as the Maritime Center alone put out an effort to do something like this before, and we ended up getting one person in, and it's Dan Fee or Dan Fye. I always forget which way he pronounces his last name. And he built hole number 6 in the shop with Case and Simeon Baldwin, who wrote the manual for the SCAMP.
Oh, Simeon wrote the manual. I didn't know that.
What a manual too! It's really nice.
Really?
Yeah, we're helping troubleshoot some issues right now, but it's really thorough. Got a lot of good pictures, a lot of good tips.
Yeah,
it's a really good manual. Anyway, so we built one, but between the power of Josh at Small Craft Advisor, the boat school with their 31 years now of proving they can do this, instructing people on how to build boats. Yeah. The Maritime Center having built the first one, and John Welsford committing to coming up, and Howard Rice committing to come be a part of it. It was just this big, all the dominoes just fell right in place, and all of a sudden people just started signing up. And we've got 10 boats getting built in here, and 3 or 4 extra guys who are going to be building a home, learning how to do it in our shop. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So most of the students are building their own boat. Some of the students are here to learn how to build one.
Yeah. There's a gentleman from Colorado who wasn't sure whether it's the boat for Colorado or not. Interestingly, Josh says that there's the highest concentration of scamps in Colorado.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm not sure why, but. There are a few. There's a gentleman here in town boy, I might be. Yeah, there are a few guys that are by a guy from Mississippi who's debating whether to build his own scamp or not, and I think he's going to. And he's really debating whether he's going to build from plans or if he's going to build from a kit. And so is the process more important, or is the boat, getting a functional boat, more important? If the process is more important to you, the enjoyment of the process, then build from plans, because then it's all you. A little more head scratching
versus buying the kit.
The kit's pretty amazing. It really is. It's
it's like a puzzle. There's a lot of pieces to it.
And what I think is so neat about the kit is that usually a kit, for those that aren't looking at my hands as I'm putting them in front of the microphone, you've got a butt joint at the planks that you stitch and then you fill with glue and you tape over it.
Right.
This gets all of that also. You're epoxying and you're taping over the garboard to the bottom and several other joints. But it's a true glued lap ply. The laps.
It's a lap strake.
It's a lap strake boat. And you actually have a bevel pre-cut into the planks. And they fit just like that. It's amazing.
That's what I've heard.
Assuming you get everything else put together properly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's pretty... The work that Case and Brandon up at Turnpoint Designs did to John and Josh didn't necessarily have a kit in mind when John drew the boat.
Yeah.
Josh had in mind the smallest boat that John could draw up that would fit these requirements. Trailerable, buildable at home, stable. All these things that fit with that small craft advisor kind of idea of what a small craft can be. And we looked at that and said, boy, that's really small. It's, you put a 6-foot guy in there and, we'd mocked it up and it looked comical almost, Yeah. And so Brandon and Case, got it, I'm going to try saying, maybe 3 times less over the next minute. Digitized it and approached John Welsford about how he'd feel about it getting stretched. Just under 12 feet. I think it was a 15% straight scale up. All aspects of the boat.
Oh, I see. Because I think originally it was maybe 10.9.
It was 10.4.
10.4.
10'4" total. Yeah. And John took a look at the numbers, and he's told us that he wanted it to be longer, actually. But Josh's wish was as small as you can go.
Yeah.
And so John actually wanted to draw a boat that was a little longer. And so he took the suggestions from Case, redrew it, took a look at how all of his numbers then correlate, and he's like, it's a better boat. Please do, And then, they turned it into a kit, and it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
And so now, we're a year and a half or 2 years afterwards, and we've got 10 being built. Josh has sold, I think, 140 plans.
Has he really?
Yeah.
How many kits have been sold,
No, I don't know that. Simeon would know that number for sure. He's
maybe
pretty in tune. It's well over a couple dozen from what I gather. Yeah.
Okay. So for somebody that's listening that might have an interest in a SCAMP camp in the future, do you know what the plans are coming down the road?
Well, there's
different things. So
the different things that you probably have heard. For sure, Pete and the boat school have locked in the same 2 weeks in August of next year.
Basically,
in
the
our boat
first
shop.
2 weeks of August.
Yeah, I think it's like next year. It's the 5th through something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a camp then for sure.
For sure. And the behind the scenes under the radar that may be happening is more like a March. So a late spring and then a late summer.
So there may be
class.
Two
there
next
may
year.
be 2.
Yeah.
And the one for certain is the one in August.
Okay.
They've already booked it with us. They've got
people signing
flyers
already,
being made
right?
up. They've got people signing up already. We actually we had to turn a person away for this class. Space was just.
Oh, really?
It's better to have demand, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that in marketing somewhere along the line. It's better to have too many people wanting to your product.
Right.
Unfortunately, we just didn't have the space. We've got, as it is, Simeon kind of tucked into a corner.
Yeah.
Building his
so
own.
There's 10 boats in there being built.
10 boats, plus the other things. We've got a little white hull being built in the shop.
Yeah.
That's taking up, what could have been 2 boats, 2 scamps. We've got David Jones building an Unamara, an Inuit design boat, 20-foot boat in there.
Yeah.
So we've got it as empty as can be.
Yeah, right.
But we're jam-packed.
So it's a 2-week class, and what is the tuition cost?
The tuition for this year, I think, was like $9.95.
$9.95.
I'm pretty sure, and Pete at the school would,
I'm not going to hold you to anything.
Yeah.
And then how about the kit? What does the kit cost?
They made a great deal on the kit, and the kit is the plywood only. The kit includes the cut plywood. For this year, being the first of, the consumable bits, the epoxy, the gloves, the this, the that's going to be tallied up afterwards, and that will be an additional cost split up amongst everybody.
Yeah.
But the plywood kit, I think, was like $1,850.
Oh, wow.
$1,850.
So that would not include like spars, sails, obviously, rudder,
centerboard, hardware.
Basically for the hull and deck and interior parts and everything. So at the end of the class, they'll have the basic hull together and pretty much complete.
They'll have the hull together. We're actually, I set a pretty ambitious schedule. We're based on what I had scheduled. We're a day behind. Oh. But I also padded the schedule in that I didn't require us to work on the weekends.
Oh, okay.
And I know several of the guys are intending to.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, but we'll be hanging a garboard tomorrow.
Really?
I hoped to be hanging the garboard today.
Yeah. How many plank boat is this?
3 plank. Yeah.
They're big.
The garboard's pretty big. Yeah.
Like 18.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say at the widest it's somewhere 13 to 18, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's a metric boat, yeah. So,
that's right.
It's something else.
All metric.
The other day,
tape and it'll be much easier.
The other day, one of the guys for the class is from Germany, and so he's used to the metric, and I don't remember why, but I said, so this piece is 1.5. I mix metric and knowingly, I said, the centerboard trunk log it's 1.5 by 50. And they're like, 1.5 inches by 50 mils wide. That makes no sense. It did make no sense, but we all got it together. But.
So it is all metric, though, sizes and everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is actually simpler if you use metric.
If you have the tools,
equipment.
Yeah. It just takes a few days to get your head wrapped around.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
We're so used to 8ths and 16ths and all that stuff.
It's like, go easy on yourself. Just go metric, and it's a matter of perspective. I grew up with standards, so that's what makes sense. It's tougher to convert back.
You have students here from all over the U.S. and
we do.
One guy from Germany.
One guy from Germany. We've got a guy from B.C. So we're three countries outside.
Yeah.
BC. There's a guy from B.C. There's a guy Cliff from Germany. There's a guy from Mississippi. There's a guy from Boulder, Idaho. A couple from Portland.
Yeah.
And a handful of guys. There's 3 from here in town. Really, 1 from Marrowstone, 2 from in town.
Yeah.
Really, it's truly international.
That's cool.
We've done other classes here in the shop, and it in similar, we do classes with Chesapeake Lightcraft. We do classes with Pygmy. We've done a class with not Stitch and Glue, but Skin on Frame.
Yeah.
The guy from
Corey Friedman.
No, Corey. We've worked on getting some together with Corey, but he's a busy guy.
Yeah. Right.
No, Cape Falcon Kayak. From down
California.
in Oregon. Yeah,
okay.
Oregon coast.
I've seen their website.
And Brian Schultz, he's a dynamo.
Really?
Yeah, he teaches a great class. The one thing that I'll say about all these different Stitch and Glue classes that we do, you're leaving with a boat that's mostly done. There's still a lot of work to be done afterwards, whether it's finish or with SCAMP, we're going to get somewhere. There's a lot of boat to do in a kit class.
Yeah.
I anticipate we're going to get the cabin top and cabin sides, but the deck may not be on. And for sure, we want them to leave with the cabin or the cockpit seats and the sole not down, because there's going to be coating to be done still. But the one thing with the Skin on Frame class, their boat's done, including a paddle, and they got out here and did an hour worth of on the water training in their own boat. It was amazing. If there's a way we can figure out how to get, we do have SCAMP 1 here, and Howard's going to be taking guys out in it. So in some regard, we're fulfilling that sort of on the water training is pretty amazing. But the skin on frame class was the only one we've done so far, and he and I were talking about doing another next winter, and possibly even an Adirondack guide boat. Skin on frame.
When did you do that class?
It was this February.
Really?
Right, I think it was over Valentine's Day.
Did you have a full class?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we had a guy from Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
We had a guy from Alaska. We had a guy from New York. A guy from Chicago. And it's not always guys. It seems like all I keep saying is guy, but it is predominantly men that end up in these classes. I don't know if we are
maybe it's
marketing.
Scott, you're just women just don't want to come. No, I'm just kidding.
That could be. My wife maybe
women,
put up
students down at the boat school.
Oh yeah, always.
I've met some women that have graduated.
Yes. It just seems like so far in the classes we've had in the shop, we've been drawing men more than women.
Yeah. Okay. So if somebody's interested, would they call the Maritime Center in a future class or a SCAMP? What would they do?
No, actually, all of the classes that we've been doing since this one's a little special in that I, as the boat shop manager, am teaching. And Jason Bledsoe, my right hand in the shop, he's teaching. That's not the norm. Normally, John Lockwood from Pygmy and his right hand, Seth, they come over. They're essentially renting space from me. I provide space.
Oh, I see.
And they teach class. Or John Harris from Chesapeake Lightcraft, he teaches class. And so all registration is done through those other groups. And so
to
it would
register for this class, it'd be the boat school?
The boat school, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know what their phone number is offhand?
360-385-4948.
Okay. So if anybody listening is interested in a SCAMP camp, then call that number.
Yeah, give them a call. Talk to Katie. Talk to Pete. Talk to Linda. All great people at the boat school. I'm a big proponent of that place, and it's not just because I went there. It's a bunch of good people doing good things.
Cool. Very good. Okay, Scott, any parting comments for our listeners today? Anything else you want to add?
Well, I'm also a big proponent of the Maritime Center. We do a lot of good things here, and it's not just these classes. We get a lot of people on the water learning to sail, whether it's kids as young as 5 up through adults. We do a lot more. We're kind of, here in the shop, we're kind of the face that everybody sees. But we do a lot more than that, and a lot more than I'm talking about right now. Anyway, good organizations, good people coming together for this SCAMP camp. And other things.
What's the web address for the Maritime Center?
It's nwmaritime.org.
Okay. nwmaritime.org. Okay.
We've got a nice website. We've got a good couple of Facebook pages for the Wooden Boat Foundation. So the Maritime Center is kind of the campus. We're the building. And the Wooden Boat Foundation, who really is who puts on the boat festival coming up, which. Yeah, put that on your calendar if you haven't already.
I have.
Good luck finding a place to stay if you want to stay in town. It's probably booked. But what's 7th, 8th, 9th of September?
9th. Yeah.
Amazing festival. 36th, I think, for this festival.
36, right.
So the Wooden Boat Foundation, they're kind of the soul.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for years and years and years, and we're these two organizations together.
I'm actually going to be doing a presentation for the first time.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Can you
Hooked on a Wooden Boats presentation Sunday morning at 9:45.
Right on.
In the Red Building here somewhere. So
great. How's it been working with Carrie and Barb, who took over?
Oh, it's
Casey?
been great. Yeah. I've been working with Barb and Luna. I haven't met them, but they've been awesome via email. So
they're
just all over it.
Casey did an amazing job for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was just a lot of how it worked was because she's plugged in. She knew a lot of people, and she had a system. She had it all done, down really well. It was 10 years, so I think that she did that. And all of a sudden, Barb and Carrie step in and try to fill kind of
pretty big shoes.
Big shoes to fill, but I think they're knocking it out of the park.
Yeah,
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, exactly.
But symposium went off. Their spring symposium went off well this year, and I can't imagine this is going to be anything different at the festival.
Right. Good. Well, thanks for your time today, Scott. I'll let you get back to the class.
Dan, good meeting you.
All right. You take care. Thanks, Scott, for doing that interview. It was really fun to come over to the SCAMP camp and watch you guys building 10 scamps. I've definitely got SCAMP fever and maybe in for the March or August course next year if I can get some dough saved up. So anyway, thanks again, Scott. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you around at the festival and so on. Next week is SCAMP CAMP Part 2. I will have a couple more interviews that I did at the SCAMP CAMP. One with John Welsford, who actually designed the SCAMP, and another one with Cliff Sell, who was a participant in the camp, built a SCAMP for himself. He's from Germany. So please tune in next week. I think you're going to love it. Well, if you'd like to support me, you can make purchases through my website on Amazon, and I get paid a small commission. The way you would do that is go to my resources page, click on any Amazon product. When you get to Amazon, then after clicking that link, anything you purchase, I get paid 4% commission, so it's a little bit, it helps. I would appreciate that. As I mentioned earlier, you can click on my website on Jamestown Distributors icon, and I get paid a little bit for that. If you love the show or like the show or hate the show, if you hate the show, you're probably not listening at this point, but if you love the show, go to iTunes, to the store, and look up Hooked on Wooden Boats, and please give me a 5-star review. Last time I checked, we had about 19 reviews. And you can also find me on Stitcher Radio. Also, I have a store now online where you can buy Hooked on Wooden Boat products. If you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/store, you can buy t-shirts, flip-flops, phone cases, coffee mugs, water bottles, that sort of thing that have the Hooked on Wooden Boats graphic. I get paid just a little bit to do that, or when you do that, so I'd love it if you could support me that way. I'd really appreciate it. Just for the record, I think since I started this podcast, I haven't actually gotten paid for any of these affiliate links yet, but I think I have a payment of $50 or $75 coming soon. So I'm not getting rich off this, but I'm not planning on getting rich. But anyway, I don't want folks out there to think that, oh, please support me. I'm asking for money. I'm making millions of dollars, and I'm going to go buy a Rolls Royce. Just trying to cover the costs of fuel and a couple things where I go out and do interviews and stuff like that. Well, I guess that's it for this week. I hope you get out on your wooden boat, and if you don't quite have it done, get out in the shop and work on it. And if you haven't started it, go get the plans or the kit to build it. And if you haven't got that far, then get on the phone with somebody and get a buddy and build a boat together. Get something going, okay? Because wooden boats are really fun. Traditional, romantic, artistic, handcrafted, one at a time. They're really cool. I think you'd love it if you built one, so go out and do it. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. This is Wooden Boat Dan, over and out. Have a great week. We'll talk again next week.